Both drivers were now trapped deep inside the cave. The exit had collapsed under heavy debris. The visibility was so poor that they couldn't even see their own hands clearly. And now, they had only a few precious minutes of oxygen left. One diver decided to go back and search for an alternate route, while the other stayed near the blocked passage. 5 minutes later, when he returned, what he saw was beyond belief. Welcome back to another gripping story on our channel. Cave diving is nothing like ordinary scuba diving. In regular scuba diving, divers move through open water if something goes wrong. They can simply swim up to the surface. But cave diving is a completely different world. The rocks above and around you trap you inside narrow tunnels, leaving just one small passage to move through. If your oxygen runs out, your equipment fails, or you lose your sense of direction, it's game over. Cave diving is one of the most dangerous sports known to man, with an extremely high casualty rate. In swimming, there are about 1.77 deaths per 100,000 participants. In base jumping, that number rises to 43. But in cave diving, for every 100,000 divers, there are about 138 deaths. A terrifying statistic. Each year, between 25 and 30 divers lose their lives while exploring these dark, underwater worlds. The number might sound small, but that's only because so few people dare to attempt it. In Florida lies Sherlock Springs, a maze-like underwater cave system. Some tunnels lead to dead ends, while others go straight toward death. The cave runs 80 to 120 feet deep. The water stays at a steady 22 degrees Celsius, and visibility is usually crystal clear. On the morning of November 17th, 1991, the weather was calm, and sunlight shimmered across the water's surface. A team of professional cave divers from the Woodville Karst Plain Project, WKPP, began a new mission to explore uncharted sections of the cave and map them. Among them were two eager new divers, Bill and Parker. They were friends, thrill seekers, and driven by adventure. For them, this wasn't just another dive. It was an opportunity to test their limits and set a new record. But they had no idea this mission would turn into the hardest fight of their lives. From above, Sherlock Springs looks like nothing more than a small pond, a circular pool, about 56 meters wide and just 9 meters deep. But beneath it lies a hidden world, a limestone cave system plunging down to 91 meters, with tunnels, chambers, and passages that feel like another dimension. It's part of the Wakula cave system, one of the largest underwater cave networks on Earth. From the entrance begins a narrow passage called the Scar, S restriction zone, so tight that only one diver can pass through at a time. The walls are close enough to scrape your shoulders and tanks as you move, but once you pass through, an incredible sight opens before you like an underwater highway. Vast and mesmerizing, beautiful, but deadly. That day, the WKPP team divided into 4 groups. Each had a vital task to ensure the mission went smoothly. The first team stayed at the surface, near the entrance, monitoring the mission, recording times, and preparing for any emergency, acting as the safety line from above. The second team was responsible for placing decompression tanks along the route so divers could breathe extra oxygen on their way back. This task was the backbone of the mission. Without decompression stops, survival was impossible. The third team managed guidelines and safety checks, fixing and backing up lines to make sure the explorers had a clear, safe route ahead. And the fourth team, the explorers, included Bill and Parker, whose job was to dive deep and discover new passages. Around 10 a.m., all teams entered the water. Bill and Parker checked their scooters and oxygen tanks, said a small prayer, and began descending into the depths. At 20 meters, they met George, a member of the decompression team. Then, adjusting their buoyancy, they continued toward the Scar's restriction zone. Using their scooters, they moved forward and soon entered a massive chamber known as what? The sight was breathtaking. It felt like floating through a sky made of water. Within 40 minutes, they reached Grand Canyon 4, and according to plan, they started their descent. The tunnel was tight, but their equipment worked perfectly. After 25 minutes of effort, they reached the lower Wakula room, where they found an upward passage. Everything so far was normal, and the divers felt calm and confident. When their oxygen levels started to drop, they decided to turn back. But what awaited them was beyond their worst fears. When they returned to the Grand Canyon bend, everything had changed. The water was clouded with silt, and visibility had dropped to 0. They couldn't even see their hands. The tunnel no longer looked like the one they had passed through earlier. It was completely different. That's when panic began to rise. Holding onto the guideline, they moved forward, hoping to reach the Scar's restriction zone soon. But soon, they realized the passage was blocked. A pile of debris and mud had sealed the exit, and even the guideline was buried under it. Their oxygen was almost gone. Panic set in. Bill signaled Parker and wrote on his slate, "Stay here, I'll check the line." He swam back to confirm whether they had taken a wrong turn, but after checking the line markers, he confirmed this was indeed the exit route. Bill rushed back to tell Parker, but when he arrived just 5 minutes later, Parker was gone. Inside the dark cave, Bill felt a wave of terror. He shone his torch around, but the thick silt made it impossible to see. Then he noticed a faint trickle of water flowing through the debris. Maybe Parker tried to dig his way through, but time was running out. Bill began digging with his bare hands. Every second felt like death was closing in. The blocked section was only 2 meters long, but for Bill, it felt endless. Finally, he made a small opening and forced his way through. The tunnel curved upward, and he noticed a regulator hanging from the line but ignored it. His own oxygen was nearly gone. At last, he reached the decompression station at 30 meters and grabbed a tank to take a deep breath. Relief washed over him. He thought he had survived. But then he saw Parker's oxygen tank still hanging untouched. That meant Parker never made it this far. If he wasn't near the debris and wasn't here either, then where was he? Bill's heart sank. He began to realize his friend was gone. Moments later, George arrived from the decompression team. Bill wrote on his slate, "Parker's dead." George tried to bring him up to the surface, but Bill refused, still in shock. He didn't want to leave his friend behind. George went back up and returned with more divers. Together, they forced Bill to the surface. Parker's disappearance stunned everyone. Divers went back to search, but they found no sign of him. Only his regulator and tank, separated and lying apart. The next morning, Parker's body was discovered near the upper section of the cave. He had removed his gear and was only wearing his wetsuit. But why did he remove it? Perhaps he thought his buoyancy would lift him upward. But he must have lost consciousness just a few meters short of the decompression tank. And that's where he died. Years later, scientists investigated and found the real cause of the tragedy. When the divers had stopped for decompression at 20 meters, their air bubbles had collected under the cave's ceiling. Over time, these bubbles weakened structure. When George left the cave, a section of the ceiling collapsed, triggering a landslide that blocked the exit. Investigators also discovered that Parker, trapped behind the debris, realized that this was the only way out. He had started digging with his hands, hoping that by the time Bill returned, the passage would already be open. But in that desperate attempt, his oxygen ran out. There wasn't much time left, and he didn't even get the chance to tell Bill, "I've cleared the way for you." That day, if Parker hadn't sacrificed his life to open the path, Bill might have lost his life behind that wreckage as well. We hope you enjoyed this story. Don't forget to like and share this video from our channel. Thank you so much for your kind comments and continued support.